basically the whole massive feud now going into it, of course, is the fact that it's going to be Lex Luger versus Yokozuna for the WWF title, Matt. And of course, the winner of that will have to face Bret Hart, which of course is the other guy that won the Royal Rumble, even though Bret Hart will also be in another match that night against his brother Owen Hart. Matt, what's interesting about that WrestleMania is a lot of people get confused because they think it's kind of like two semi-main events, and the winner of both of them goes through to the finals. But of course, it wasn't that. It was brother versus brother. That was its own separate thing. And then you had the whole title thing, and it was about having... Basically, the idea was that you have two Royal Rumble winners, so they both should earn shots against Yokozuna, which in a way, Matt, is kind of a little bit of a heel move, isn't it, really? That Yokozuna's got to face two people in one night for the champion. But so I guess that's why they had Owen and Bret on that night as well. So going into this, Matt, obviously we'd seen Yokozuna and Lex Luger at SummerSlam last year. Were you surprised that they didn't have any other kind of creative mode for Luger or this championship in general? Because it seems like to me like Yokozuna has held on for this for a long old time now, since King of the Ring of last year, and you know they've tried. They're trying to put the feelers out there. Who really is the next guy? Is it Bret? Is it Lex Luger? Do you think, Matt, even by the Royal Rumble time, they've already put their eggs in one basket with Bret? Is that how you see it there, and that Luger was never ever going to get the belt here?
Yeah, I see it that way, but I will say that I also had the feeling that, you know, that after all the effort they put into Luger, that they would hold on to one vain hope that things might turn around. You know, you never know. But yeah, Bret Hart was always there, so that was always in the bag. They could always turn to Bret. But the fact that like they have hope, I mean, that they have Luger in this position in the first place, just goes to show that there was some sort of feeling out there still for the guy, that they still held on to some hope. But I just really didn't understand, like you said, in general, like the whole thing of like, why should two face characters fight the heel, you know, the same night? And how do you decide who goes on first and who goes on last? And like that also shows to me the lack of depth in the roster at the time, that Bret would have to fight twice in one night, you know, even though you know, Luger could have won that match like first, and then you'd have all these multiple scenarios going on. Does that mean it's Luger versus Bret, or what goes on next?
Yokozuna cashes in a rematch clause. I mean, it could have got anywhere. It could have had Hogan come out again for all we know, and do that. Of course, this would be the first WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan. It's worth pointing out as well. It's number 10, and there are still rumours going around, Matt, that fans believe that Hogan will show up and kind of do what he done last year. He'll be there. Might not be in a match, but he's going to be there. Obviously, that doesn't happen, and WWF have got to kind of go a completely different route here. And I feel like WrestleMania 10, if anything, does give you that. But Matt, did you get to see the match between, of course, Yokozuna and Lex Luger from WrestleMania 10?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I saw that. And, I was trying really hard to find the bits that were different from their previous meeting. But it wasn't really coming to me. I was like, this is just the same thing. I don't know whether it's just them two working together in general, but spicing it up didn't really occur to them, I imagine.
No, not at all. Basically, the Wrestling Observer do a poll with their readers, and this got the worst match of the night, which is saying something, I think, considering some of those other matches are on there. But Meltzer writes that Yokozuna retained the WWF title, beating Lex Luger via DQ in 14 minutes 40 seconds. Of course, Mr. Perfect was out there as the guest referee and played an expected role in the outcome. On the confidential run sheet before the show, this match was listed to be around 25 minutes. For the record, the finishes weren't listed and on the run sheet itself between Yoko and Lex Luger. This match, Matt, I mean, it's not exactly going down a whole tree in the big things. I mean, when I saw this, but just to finish up on what Meltzer reviews this as being, some of the parts that he writes here is that he writes, "Thank God that this didn't last any longer. This was one hold after another by Yokozuna. The guy has just gotten." He's reporting that this. There was a massive change in Yokozuna's, by the way, in his appearance here, Matt, as well. If you go back to '93 and you look at him a year later, you can tell he has definitely put on a hell of a lot more weight, and it looks like he's suffering for it as well, Matt. Did you notice that much in this match?
Yeah, of course. Simple things, like trying to do the bonsai drop, like trying to even climb it looks like it's taken so much out of him, like he's knackered trying to lift his own body weight.
Yeah, it was really tough to watch that. Okay, Meltzer reports towards the end of this, by the way, and it's worth pointing out here, is that there were chants, Matt, of boring going on. I can't say I heard it myself, but it wasn't exactly a great reaction from when I was watching this match. Like, it just felt like, I don't know if it was the New York crowd, but it felt like this is something that nobody was coming in thinking this is going to make any difference to the outcome of the night, and this isn't what people wanted to see. I don't know what would have happened had Luger have won this. How fans would have reacted to that. Who knows? But yeah, this is not going down well all round. Meltzer finishes up by saying, although this didn't come across on television that well, apparently this match didn't have much crowd reaction either, and was filled with the boring chants and please finish chants, apparently. So yeah, couldn't have been that great at that time. I guess, WrestleMania, Madison Square Garden on anniversaries, Matt, maybe it's just like it always has one of those matches, Matt. I mean, where it's Goldberg and Lesnar, there's always going to be one of them from Madison Square Garden in particular. Maybe that's just one of the things. But, Matt, finishing here on Lex Luger and the whole Lex Express, because this is kind of where we come to an end on this particular episode of Lex Luger. Do you ever feel like, do you put the blame on Lex Luger, or do you put the blame on creative? Why didn't this work, Matt, when they obviously put so much behind it? What was this, just a sort of combination of both, or was there one more weighing heavily on than the other?
No, I would say I'd put it on the creative, really. Mm-hmm. I really didn't like the idea of giving him the All-American gimmick, like he was going to step into Hogan's shoes and automatically fill that role. I think at that time, losing Hogan was like a massive deal, and his fans would have been still loyal to him. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them, when he eventually made his move to WCW, would have followed him over to WCW just to see him. Sure. So trying to have like a cheap imitation was not going to go down well. But given another opportunity in a different role and a different gimmick, Lex Luger could have been fine. And if they'd stuck with him in the heel gimmick, I think even that could have been a good idea for him. He might have been much more successful as a heel even. Yeah,
I think it's hard to really see where this went wrong. The only thing I think as well is that there wasn't, although it looks like they've done such a great promotional job of Lex Luger, I think you've got to remember the way he come in here. First of all, he's playing that character, the narcissist. Now, I think if WWF would have known back then what the eventuality was going to be with the way they were going to promote Luger, if they could have had him debuting not this over-the-top Lex Express business, but debuting as just a solid kind of worker, kind of similar to what we saw in the match with Tatanka, that kind of style. I think he would have because that was a night where fans were actually digging this guy. I think they may have stood a chance, but again, I'm not sure you can just kind of go Hogan straight to somebody else who, just because he looks physically good, is going to work. And I think as well that I think Brett definitely had more of the respect going on. It was kind of like today's version, I suppose, of how Daniel Bryan finally got in. I think it was that kind of thing where you just couldn't ignore it anymore. And I know that Vince, up until this point, hadn't really. I mean, Brett, I guess in a lot of ways, Matt, was the first guy that come along who wasn't the typical quote unquote body type of a main eventer for Vince at the time. He was probably the first that come along. And of course, Shawn Michaels was doing great matches, in particular that night in the ladder match. But he was coming along as well. So I kind of feel like it was a step in a different direction. And maybe it was a combination of that as well for Luger, that he was up against someone like Brett. Maybe if it was somebody else, Luger may have stood a better chance. But I do feel like there was a kind of a competition going on between the two, even though, Matt, it was very easy to identify that the promotion was behind Luger the entire time. Okay, it's worth pointing out here, Luger didn't just sort of fizzle out from WWF straight after. After this WrestleMania, Luger would begin feuding with friend Tatanka, and they would have a lackluster trust between each other, and they would go on to have a match at SummerSlam that year. Tatanka defeated Luger and joined Ted DiBiase's $1 Million Corporation. At Survivor Series, he was in a Survivor Series match team. They were called Guts and Glory. It was Lex Luger, Mabel, Adam Bomb, and the Smoking Guns, who lost in a match against the corporate team of Tatanka, King Kong Bundy, Bam Bam Bigelow, and the Bodies or something at that point. And also, then going into 1995, of course, I'm sure everybody will probably remember this, which was the tag team he formed with Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog. They were called the Allied Powers. You remember that, Matt? The tag team that they were. They made their pay-per-view debut as a tag team at WrestleMania, defeating the Blue Brothers at the time. They defeated the Jobbers on Raw after the victory against Men on a Mission, which was King Mabel and all the rest of it. So eventually, Matt, Luger would leave the WWF. And of course, we all remember what happened when he turned up on WCW in late August 1995. After expressing to Sting that he wanted to leave the WWF, Luger got a call from WCW Vice President Eric Bischoff to set up a meeting about a contract and Luger possibly jumping ship. Bischoff initially was reluctant to make the offer, as he did not care for Luger personally or professionally, but went back in because of Sting's urging for the deal to go through, and the idea of the appearance would make a big splash. Bischoff offered Luger only $150,000 a year, 20% of what he was making when he left WCW 3 years earlier. So obviously, Matt, we remember when he finally did turn up, and he of course was on the non-live show of Raw, and of course he was on the live WCW show, and it was kind of one of the first guys, I think, Matt, that kind of just done that whole drop WWF and go straight to WCW. He was the first guy of that kind, Matt, wasn't he? That did the deliberate move. How will Luger's time in WWF kind of be remembered for you, Matt, overall? Is it a failed attempt for him and he was more of a WCW guy, do you feel? Or do you think there was some good positives in amongst the run that he had?
I think he was like necessary. I think he was what WWF needed just